Hello and welcome to Padre's Corner. I'm Father Robert Balassier, the digital Jesuit, Padre SJ in the Twit TV chat room. Now, Padre's Corner is about pretty much anything I want it to be about. You see, we wanted an hour, sometime during the week, where I could go through the chat room, talk to the men and the women, the guys and the gals, the geeks and all the derps, and find out what is it that we want to discuss. Now, Twit TV covers a lot of the topics in the tech world, but we're going to put our own little spin on it. Now, what do you say? Let's get straight to it. This first little story has, well, a bit of significance for the people who watch this show because we've talked about Bitcoin a lot. In fact, we've talked about cryptocurrency an awful lot. Now, we know that Mt. Gox was an exchange. It's based in Japan that originally started as a Magic the trading card game, an exchange for those trading cards. Well, they moved into Bitcoin, and what we found out was that, well, they weren't really good at that. They thought that they had lost over 850,000 Bitcoins. At the time, that's about 1/25th of all the Bitcoins that will ever be in existence. Now, of course, this was a huge scandal. It drove the price of Bitcoins down. It really sort of shook the foundation of that particular cryptocurrency because they figured if a big player like Mt. Gox was playing it so loose that they could lose 850,000 Bitcoins, well, what about all the other exchanges? We now know that it's even worse than that. You see, Mt. Gox has come out and they've said, oh, by the way, yeah, 200,000 of those 850,000 Bitcoins, we had them in another wallet. I mean, this is kind of akin to you breaking out an old pair of jeans and finding $20 in your pocket. Instead of just $20, though, it's closer to, you know, a couple of million. Not a great thing. Now, these Bitcoins will go back to the customers. So they're not saying that it's the 200,000 Bitcoins that Mt. Gox lost. They're saying that these actually will belong to the customer accounts. But still, this is not a good thing. When it was just theft, we could say, look, they didn't guard their systems very well. They didn't really design their security properly. They didn't have good protocols and guidelines in place to protect their customer deposits. But with this newest revelation that they just misplaced 200,000 Bitcoins, they just accidentally put them into wallets that they forgot about, it shows one of the weaknesses in an unregulated industry like Bitcoin. I mean, yeah, regulation adds a lot of issues. It adds a lot of trouble. It adds a lot of overhead to any sort of industry. But the thing about regulation is it also adds consistency. One of the big problems with Bitcoin, and in fact any cryptocurrency, is that without this regulation, you are really at the mercy of the business, the entity, the person that you decide to do business with. It's designed to be peer-to-peer, which is what I love about Bitcoin. I love about cryptocurrency. I love the fact that it's allowed to be anonymous, but then you really, really fall under the buyer beware paradigm, which is if they decide to screw you, if they decide to take your money, if they decide to act in bad faith, you really have no recourse. So this is something that's definitely going to have to be solved before Bitcoin goes really mainstream. Now let's move away from Bitcoin. I just had to bring that up because I thought it was interesting that someone could lose that much Bitcoin and just realize that, oh yeah, we put it in that other thing, that computer that we put up on a shelf and forgot about. Let's go to something that's happy. Just this last week, there was the announcement of a groundbreaking discovery, specifically the discovery of gravity waves that may indicate the conditions at the start of the universe during the Big Bang. Now, before we do this, we're going to have to do a quick course in Big Bang theory because, remember, it is a theory. This has been developed for years and years and years, but there was a particular part of Big Bang theory that we called cosmic inflation. Now, cosmic inflation was first posited by American physicist Alan Guth almost 30 years ago. Now, what Guth said was there's a problem with the Big Bang theory in that in a model of linear expansion, so in a model where you have a big explosion and the universe expands out from that explosion, it doesn't explain why so many distant parts of the universe are at the same temperature. It goes to say that if there was a linear expansion, that over time, as the universe expanded, those different parts of the universe should be at different temperatures. That's how it works. So instead, they came up with this theory that, no, it wasn't a linear expansion. What we had was cosmic inflation. The inflation happened long enough to produce 90% of the currently observable universe. In other words, it expanded so fast, in fact, faster than the speed of light, faster than gravity could contain it, that the universe just flashed into existence. And ever since then, we've been getting the waves, the photons, the early indicators and messages from that first Big Bang. Now, how does that work, you might ask? Well, I think the best way that I could explain this is to consider our own sun. If you watch any program about how the sun works, you know that it takes, we think, about 100,000 years for a photon, for light to reach us, or at least the surface of the sun, from the core of the star. The reason for that is that light in the form of photons is readily absorbed and then re-emitted by any molecule it comes into contact with. So in other words, you might have this molecule and this molecule. A photon comes in, hits this molecule, it gets absorbed, and it gets re-emitted. But it can be re-emitted in any direction. So when you have mass packed as densely as it is packed inside of a star, that photon will be ricocheting for years and years and years, 100,000 years, before it finally gets to the layers of the star that are thin enough, where we're starting to get into plasma, we're starting to get into gas, that the photon can make a relatively straight path for outside the sun, outside the star, and then to all parts known. Now, if we consider that model, consider how that works as photons are bouncing in between, then we have something that is a bit more akin to the theory of inflation. We know exactly how signals could be trapped at the beginning of the universe, at the beginning of time, before they get to us. Now, we've got this wonderful chart that I believe I got from Wired. This is the history of the universe through the theory of inflation. Imagine this. We have the Big Bang. We have quantum fluctuations. And then at the very beginning of the universe, as you see right here, it expands. It expands incredibly and then pretty much tapers off. Now we know that the universe continues to expand. We know that the universe continues to actually speed up. The expansion is continuing to go. But most of what we call the known universe today existed right after the Big Bang. That's the theory of inflation. That's the thing that solved for why distant parts of the universe are the same temperature. Okay, now what does all of this have to do with this super cool discovery that was just made this last week? Well, let's talk a little bit about cosmic microwave background. We call it background radiation. In fact, if you were a watcher of Stargate Universe, you know that they specifically talked about this. This is one of the driving plot devices of the series. That's why I love that series so much, because they were talking about something that I've been researching since I was in high school. Now, imagine those photons, just like we talked about in our star. Now, imagine the photons that were created during the Big Bang. Let's talk about all of those particles that came into existence at the start of the universe. Well, if you can imagine that it takes 100,000 years for a photon to get from the core of the sun to the surface because it's so dense, imagine how long it would take for a photon, for a particle to get from the core of that Big Bang explosion to all parts unknown of the universe, with as dense as that must have been. All of creation contained within that very small volume, that very small area. What we posit, what they believe, is that it took about 350,000 years before there was enough of a thinning effect because of inflation for those photons to actually start heading out. But here's the important part. Because photons receive a spin, they receive a polarization. That's what we talk about when we say light has polarization. That's why polarized lenses work, because I can filter out light that has a specific spin. But because it has a spin, it means that those earliest photons, which are still traveling out from the start of creation, contain information about the environment at the time that they were created. That's one of the wonderful things about physics. That's why we are so interested in these gravity waves. Now, when we're talking about these gravity waves, we have to talk about what are called B-mode polarization. Again, when we're talking about these photons, they are affected by gravity. The gravity waves, which were first posited by Albert Einstein as part of his general theory of relativity, imagine them like rocks dropped into a pond. In this theory, in this model, as these photons travel outward, they travel through these warps, these bends in space and time created by these massive gravity wells, and they in turn are bent. and that's what makes them contain information. Now, there are two types of B-mode polarization. The first type is created by just a photon's traversement of a major gravity wave, a major gravity well, a field. Now, we've detected those. Back in July of 2013, the South Pole Observatory detected what they thought were those first type of B-mode polarization photons. However, there's a second type that they believe were not given their spin by passing through a gravity well, but by the beginning of time itself. In other words, these were the photons that were created in that Big Bang, the ones that are just reaching us now, the ones that they think they've just detected down south. Now here we have what they think these photons actually look like. This is what the B mode looks like as it's making its way through these observatories down south. Now, all of the hoopla, all of the excitement over this discovery has been because they think that now they've got these photons that are indicative of the twist that was given to them during the Big Bang, during cosmic inflation. We can now actually have insight into what it was like at the beginning of the universe, when you had temperatures and pressures that were unheard of, that can no longer be made by any apparatus that we could ever make in our world. Now, what does this all mean? Well, first of all, it's interesting for physics. If you are a physicist, this is probably more exciting even than the potential discovery of the Higgs boson. This is something that speaks to us at the very nature of what physics means. If we know that the universe could have expanded at the speed beyond the speed of light, if we know that different parts of the universe can have the same temperature because they were expanded from the same matter, from the same space so quickly, then it changes how we understand the cosmos, how we understand the universe, and hell, that's a great thing. Now, when we come back, you know what? I think with all that science, I need to go on a rant. I need to talk about something that's bugging me. But before that, I thought maybe, just maybe, I might want to think about what my life would be like if I were an adventurer.
Hey, loser! You lost? Where'd you come from, boy?
No.
What is this? Plastic.
Looks good on him. Give my helmet back. Give my helmet back! We're not so different, you and I. I used to be an adventurer, just like you, before I took... Oh, no. Bruce.
Again, thanks to my friends over at Corridor Digital. If you haven't seen Padre's Corner before, I played a few of their videos because I really like what they do. Their work is incredible. Now, these guys started out as film students who just started doing special effects. And if you look at a lot of their early videos, it was just the cool things that you could do with off-the-shelf tools, with things from Adobe, After Effects. But they've gradually worked themselves into storytelling, into a specific type of storytelling. They love to do stories from our childhood. They love to take the video games that we grew up with and then turn them into something that is just, it's fun. It's a logical extension of what it would be like if we lived in the video games that we love so much. Now, what I would suggest is go over to Corridor Digital. Go ahead and jump in there and subscribe to their videos, or maybe even jump over to their Twitter page and subscribe. They're worthy of your follow, and tell them that Padre sent you, because I think if I can get them to agree, they're going to be guests on the show. Now let's go from Fusrota to a little bit of ranting. Specifically, I want to talk about banks. Now, before I get into this, let me say right off the bat, I don't think banks are evil. I don't think bankers are evil. I don't think financial institutions are all out to get us. I think that they work in a specific framework that we allowed to be created. In fact, that we encouraged, that have had some unforeseen side effects. And one of them happened with the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. Now, if you don't know what the Glass-Steagall Act is, think back to the Great Depression. What triggered the Great Depression was that banks started gambling with the deposits of their investors, of you and me. When they did that, and when they lost big, it means that they lost everything. They lost all the finances of all their customers, which drove the country into the Great Depression. Now, Glass-Steagall was created to prevent that. Specifically, it separated the bank from the broker, the investor from the savings. It no longer allowed banks to make decisions with their customers' money that could also benefit them on the other side. In other words, it prevented them from being on both sides of the transaction. That's a very good thing, and that worked for many years. It kept the economy solid, it kept us safe, but it also did one thing. It kept the economy small. It made it kind of stagnant, because when you have a stable economy, there's not a lot of room for people to make money. Unfortunately, the people who normally make money are the people who already have money. So what we saw was that way back, we had the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. It was in 1996, the Gramm-Leach-Billy Act, which was also part of the Financial Services Modification Act of 1999, which modified the Glass-Steagall Act, allowing your banker to again be your broker. And really, that's been the major force behind every bubble and burst in the new millennium. When we talk about what happened with the housing markets, it was because our bankers were allowed to gamble with our money and buy in derivatives, which they also created. Again, they were on both sides of the financial transaction. Now we're just realizing that another effect of the Financial Services Modification Act is that it allowed banks to merge with heavy industry. Now, what's wrong with that, you might ask? Well, imagine the same institution that holds your purse string also recommends what investments you make, and therefore can manipulate the financial markets as well. They also own the oil tankers, the airports, the trains, the mines, the rigs, the plants, and factories that supply those financial markets with products, services, and materials. In other words, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup can now manipulate the market on both ends of the supply-demand chain. It's no longer that they're on both sides of the transactions. It's now that they can control both how much you pay for it and what kind of supply there is. They can drive their customers to or from an investment, playing with demand, and they can change the mining schedule of, say, raw materials, or slow transportation of finished goods, and slow manufacturing of products. In other words, repealing Glass-Steagall allowed banks to gamble with their depositors' money. And again, that's never a good thing. That's what caused the Great Depression. Now, they tried to reenact Glass-Steagall with Dodd-Frank in 2009, but it's been turned down every year since then. In fact, this bill is constantly being reintroduced because they realize our financial markets are still in peril. We are in a recovery phase, but if we continue to allow banks to gamble, and if we allow them to vertically integrate so that they control every point of the transaction, it's a natural, unstable point in our economy. Now, okay, remember how at the beginning I said I didn't want to demonize bankers, I didn't want to demonize banks or financial institutions. Again, let me not, don't take this as, oh yes, kill the bankers. This setup allows us to make a lot of money very, very quickly. We know from Bitcoin that unregulated markets can go up and down really, really quickly, and there's a lot of potential for growth. There's a lot of potential for profit. But we need to strike a balance, and I think this is the thing that we're just really starting to realize. We need to strike a balance between having a market that is amenable to creating a lot of wealth, and at the same time, we'll also make sure that we're not flushing it down the toilet. Again, I think it's just time for us to learn that we need to live with a little bit of regulation for a little bit of security. Now, when we come back, I'm going to introduce our brand spanking new guest. He's a wonderful man. He's someone who I have admired for a long time, so I'm so happy that he's here on the show. But before we do that, you know what? I think maybe it's time for us to listen to some, Coda Girl.
To my Coda Girl, yeah. Come on, Coda Girl, She my Coda Girl, yeah. To my Coda Girl, Come on, Coda Girl, She my Coda Girl, yeah. To my Coda Girl, yo. Tell him. To be the keys underneath her fingertips. Her class makes her brother back waffle wanna flip. And be number one on a link list and get a call back. I'm in all caps. Feels like my first hello world. What it is to run with a Coda Girl. And it ain't hard to like how she writes with a pretty interface, plus her source is tight, right? Wanna get in where I fit in like a plug-in. This is the true meaning of computer loving. She got a data stack that's straight stunning. No mismatch exceptions or debugging. Invariably, how would I pass this? When my Coda Girl grants me root access. Basically, she's a certified A+. Yo, it's more than just techno lust. Feels like my first hello world, cuz she's my Coda Girl. Man, I had to dedicate this one to my Coda Girl. I'll put it like this so you can understand. She makes me want to update to be a better man. When we compile, she's easy to interpret. A cross-platform version I can work with. She's not wrapped in Flash. All she wants is a Java and a shell to bash. Wow, she's a sight to see. Plus, her smile glimmers just like a Ruby does. She can never be subroutine. The high priority process of my machine. Sharper than most chicks you know. She's not another shallow copy acting pseudo. It's that good type dependency. I function better with CG next to me. And it always leads to an overflow when it's runtime and we take it slow. Feels like my first hello world, cuz she's my Coda Girl. Man, I had to dedicate this one to my Coda Girl. To be the keys underneath her fingertips. Her class makes her brother back waffle wanna flip. And be number one on a link list and get a call back. I'm in all caps. Feels like my first hello world. What it is to run with a Coda Girl. And it ain't hard to like how she writes with a pretty interface, plus her source is tight, right? Wanna get in where I fit in like a plug-in. This is the true meaning of computer loving. She got a data stack that's straight stunning. No mismatch exceptions or debugging. Invariably, how would I pass this? When my Coda Girl grants me root access. Basically, she's a certified A+. Yo, it's more than just techno lust. Feels like my first hello world, cuz she's my Coda Girl. Man, I had to dedicate this one to my Coda Girl. Come on, Coda Girl. To my Coda Girl, yeah. She my Coda Girl. To my Coda Girl, yeah. Come on, Coda Girl. Coda Girl, Come on, Coda Girl, Come on.
That was Coda Girl by Dale Chase. He's a man who I've really admired. I've listened to a lot of his music. Believe it or not, I started listening to him back when I was listening to Dual Core. Some of his nerdcore rap it's kind of entertained me. But then I found Dale, and his rhymes are so smooth that it's made me want to listen to music again. I wish we had him in studio. Oh wait. We do. Dale Chase, my goodness, how are you? Thank you so very much for coming on Padre's Corner.
Are you kidding? How could I not?
No.
You extend such a lovely invitation. There's no way I'm going to say no.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? It's just because we loves you. We loves you so much. I mean, seriously, your music has been a source of so much, I'm going to say, zen for me. You're first of all, let me ask you this. How do you come up with your lyrics? Because it's one thing to rap, it's another thing to do nerdcore. That stuff's pretty hard.
You know, that's just, that was just what I'm into. I am a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm a coder now professionally. you know, and yeah, I actually had been following. Actually, she's a host on Twit. I had been following Gina Trapani's career, and you know, looking at her Grease Monkey scripts for Gmail and whatnot, and she was actually part of the inspiration for that song.
Okay, I got to ask this. So, you're a programmer by trade, right? That's your thing.
Yeah. Now, actually, quite recently. It's always been a hobby growing up. And I've been able to actually slide into a gig where I actually can do it professionally now.
Oh, so what do you do?
I was trained as an audio engineer.
Okay.
But now I'm writing like scripts, like back-end kind of scripts at Discovery Digital Networks.
So I got to ask, how did these two worlds come together? I've seen it happen a few times when, I mean, you've always got, it must be the technical mind that's kind of drawn to content creation, video production, audio production, and music. But what did it for you? Why did you become a nerdcore celebrity?
I had always had a passion for creating music. Like I was always making my own beats and writing rhymes. But you know, growing up in Brooklyn, as I did, you know, and being a geek as I was, you know, that's not what everybody was rapping about. Obviously, you know, they were rapping about, you know, guns and drugs and that sort of thing. I was like, well, that's not my thing, and I didn't think anybody wanted to hear what I had to rap about. Until I actually started hearing guys like you mentioned, like dualcore, and then I was like, oh, I can, you know, rap about, you know, computers and geeky things, and yeah, and that's, you know, I did Coda Girl and got a really good response from that, and I was like, yeah, I'll mess around with this.
Did it really all start with Coda Girl?
Well, it started with another song actually called, but which wasn't really a geeky song. It was gosh, what was that song? It was it was another song on that EP, which was like sort of a, like, you know, a girl had broken my heart and I wanted to write something, you know. And so, but after I wrote that, you know, then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just kept on going. And then I wrote the rest of the EP, and Coda Girl was on there.
Now, before we get any further, I do want to point something out. This looks like the evil version of you. Your look has changed a little bit. What's happened? You now look a lot more, let's just say, approachable?
Well, I was younger there, and I didn't mind looking older, and I'm older now, so I'm trying to look younger.
I got it. No, I understand. I know how that works. Now, let me ask you this. So when you are thinking of lyrics for your next song, your next track, I remember we were at a Hack 5 party, and you were just saying, oh yeah, so right now in my head, I got lines about like SCSI. I'm thinking about the SCSI interface. And
you remember that?
I remember that, and I was like, is that how that works? I mean, is that how the creative process is?
Well, now you hear it. Well, that line is on my latest full length.
Yeah, what's the line?
Bent like a SCSI pin and hard to find like a Microsoft kin.
See, that's the thing. The lyrics for your songs, it sounds hip hop, it sounds rap, but then if you actually listen to them, you're like, oh my God. If you were a geek from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, you know exactly what he's talking about. It's all those inside jokes. In fact, I have a story here that I think you might like. I live at St. Ignatius College Prep. It's a high school. It's one of our Jesuit schools in San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
And we just recently had a student who was called into the principal's office because we have a policy of you can't play gangster rap on campus if it's loud enough for other people to hear it. I mean,
right.
Listen to it yourself, but you know, it's a kind of a closed campus, and they don't really allow any music. So he gets called in, and they call me in, and they're like, yeah, this is on his device. Can you figure out where it came from, what it's going? And as I'm looking through it, I'm like, you realize he's not listening to gangster rap. Like, no, we heard it. I'm like, no, listen again and listen to the lyrics. And it was your song Goblin Town, where you were with
Dualcore.
You were with Dualcore.
Yeah, Adam
you were
Warrock.
Talking about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you should be playing this in English class. Why are you putting this kid in trouble? So I mean, that's one of the things that I love about your art. I love about your music, and I'm so happy to have you here. So what do you say we get into some tech?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So we've got a story here from I don't know, what is this? What are we talking about first? Oh, right, Spotify. Okay, now you know what Spotify is, right?
Yeah, I'm on there.
You're on Spotify?
Yeah.
Do you like Spotify?
I do. I don't actually use it as my music service of choice at the moment. But that's not to say I might not in the future. I mean, right now I'm doing Google's All Access, but hate that app. So I might end up going over to Spotify.
Yeah. Well, Spotify has been a very popular service for a lot of people, especially people on iOS. It's just something that really blends in well. They've gotten in trouble recently with artists who are saying they're a bit stingy on their payouts, which is weird because in the last year they paid out over $500 million. $500 million, which was about 700% or 70% of their gross income. So they're not really being stingy. They just don't make a whole lot from advertising. Well, a group has realized that there's a way to game the system, because the way that Spotify pays out the royalties is they pay for play. Specifically, they pay for how long you're on the stream. If people want to listen to your music, they add up all the time that they listened, and you get paid accordingly.
Right.
Well, we've got a group from Michigan called, what is it, the Wolfpack?
I have no idea how they probably, but yeah.
I believe it's like VULFPEK, Wolfpack. So the Wolfpack, they're a funk group who figured out that all you have to do is tell your listeners to go ahead and play your album all night. Just keep listening to it. Now, in order to do this, they went ahead and they created an album, an entire album filled with tracks of nothing but silence. That's right. If you go to their Spotify page, you'll get music that is nothing but hours and hours of silence. Here's what they told their listeners to do. They said, if you're a fan of the band, of the Wolfpack, listen to this at night. Go ahead and turn it on your device. Listen all throughout the night to silence. Put it on repeat. And then every person who does this will earn us, if they listen throughout the night, will earn us $4 per listen, per night per person. And they said they're going to take those funds and provide a free tour, targeting the cities with the most listeners who do this. Now, Chase, there is a part of me that says, okay, power to them. This is kind of cool. You game the system. But as a musician, what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously this is something that's not sustainable. But is this something to be admired, or something to say, hey, you're being a douche?
Yeah, I mean, as a musician, I admire them, and it's, they're hacking the system, and, it's pretty cool. But yeah, there's no way that, well, for two reasons. On the one hand, like only groups with a certain amount of, a certain fan base, that they can galvanize to do this sort of thing, it's going to be successful, for only these guys. And then, once enough people start doing it, Spotify could easily quell this, just like checking, the audio files as they upload them, the kind of things, So if once Spotify decides, these guys are getting out of control, it's not going to be an issue anymore. But, hooray for them for figuring out this loophole to get their tour going. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's almost like a Kickstarter for musicians. Now, this is actually a piece of music that you found on YouTube. They're not bad.
Yeah, these guys are funky.
It's definitely funky.
I'll check them out when they come to town.
Absolutely. So, I mean, maybe we should start a campaign to stream Spotify.
Right?
Okay, and again, this goes to the whole idea that hold on, wait. Can we sit for a second and listen to the funk?
Right?
All right, that's enough of that. So, yeah, I want to commend them for figuring out a way to game the system. Of course, I want to commend them for figuring out a way to get more royalties out of Spotify. But at the same time, I don't want to encourage this, because if enough groups were to do this, this would absolutely kill the system, right?
I don't think it would actually kill it. I mean, it would just force Spotify to just take action,
Yeah. All right. Well, you get to call it, folks. You get to say if this was douchey or if this is the future of music, where they just use these gamed systems to figure out a way to kickstart their tour. Now, let's get on to the next bit, and that is about Netflix. Now, Chase, you know all about Netflix and net neutrality, right?
I know all about Netflix, according to Cloud at least.
Now, we know that recently Netflix paid an agreement with Comcast to, essentially give them protection money. We're going to give you money, and in turn, Comcast are not going to slow down our traffic, so that our users, the people who have subscribed to our service, who are on Comcast, will be able to watch what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, in a decent frame rate with decent quality. Wasn't the best thing, but Netflix essentially tried to spin it, saying, we're not too broken up about this. This all changed with a blog post in which they outlined the terms of what was happening with Comcast, and they specifically said, look, you've got internet trolls going out right now who are destroying the net, and we need to push for strong net neutrality. Now, if you go to the Netflix blog right now, you can find this post, and it is fantastically detailed. They look at how the industry works. They look at how the content reaches their watchers. They look at how they have to pay in order to guarantee that their service will make it. Now, let me break down some of the highlights. They talked about two things that I think are most important. The first is that Netflix already had to pay other intermediaries like Cogent and Level 3 the same sort of tax that they're paying to Comcast. They had to pay them in order to guarantee that their packets were going to make it on time. In fact, this was one of those sort of Sicilian thing. Look, it would be a bad thing if your packets were not to arrive in time. And so they've been doing this for a while, but now they're getting kind of sick of it. When they look at the system, they also have this other little bit, and that is they've acknowledged that they're using up about 30% of the traffic on many ISPs. And so naturally, those ISPs want Netflix to share in the cost of delivering that content. But Netflix has turned it around. They said, look, if we are responsible for 30% of the traffic on your ISP, shouldn't we also be entitled to 30% of the profit that you get from those customers? If people are signing up with your ISP, and if people are signing up with the premium version of your ISP in order to get Netflix, shouldn't we get a cut of what you get from those customers? Now, Dale, let me ask you, what's your take on that? Do you think that holds water, or is that just Netflix lashing out?
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, because what are people signing up with these ISPs for? They're signing up with these ISPs so they can stream Netflix. So if Netflix is the draw, I mean, the ISPs need to make sure that their systems are set up so that when someone requests a Netflix film, that they're getting the Netflix film that they request at the quality that they should have it, without Netflix having to pay any extra fees, since they're the ones that are actually putting loot in the ISP's pocket. Yeah,
it's just one of those things that's like, wait a minute. Yeah, I understand that we're taking up a lot of traffic, but don't we already pay you for that?
Yeah.
I mean, Netflix already has to pay a fee to get on the internet. We already have to pay a fee to get on the internet. Netflix already has to pay for every byte they push out into the internet, and then all the carriers have agreed to share traffic between them. So there is that question of, why are we paying 3 to 5 times for every bit that passes through the pipes on the internet? That's the part that has always baffled me, which is, how many times do you get to charge for the same transmitted packet? And I don't think we've caught up with that yet.
No, yeah, it's crazy, and hopefully these sorts of things will push the ISPs to improve their services, and really it's sort of anti-competitive, isn't it? Like, because smaller companies aren't going to be able to pay these fees. These startups, they're trying to do video services, they're not going to be able to pay these fees, that Netflix can provide. So, I mean, Netflix is kind of like, kind of paving the way to make sure that it stays, a fair game, down the road.
Yeah. We've got Spilled Milk in the chat room, and actually we've got a couple of really good comments in the chat room. Spilled Milk was saying how, this is gonna increase the bills that we're gonna get from our ISPs, which I think that's absolutely true. We've also got Beef, who was saying that they would, basically that Netflix should be creating its own network. This is an interesting stance, because I think this is something that Google has been doing really well with the expansion of their networks. Now, remember, the reason why Google was able to offer things like Google Fiber is because they already built out a huge network to interconnect their data centers. They didn't want to have to pay the crazy transit fees from the ISPs and from the telcos to get data from one data center to another to serve out all their YouTube streams, to serve out all the content that comes off of Google services. So what they did was they have strategically located co-locations at these major exchange points, and then they own all the fiber between them. Now this did a few things. First, this made Google the largest ISP in the country. Believe it or not, they actually have more fiber in the ground than Verizon, Cogent, Level 3, Sprint, any of those companies. In fact, they're the only ones of all those telcos who own coast-to-coast fiber. They're the only ones who don't have to interchange through any other system. Now, Dale, I don't know how much you know about the system, but in the internet right now, if I'm a Comcast subscriber and I want to get to a server that's in New York, I'm not actually going on the Comcast system the whole way. I'm routed through the Comcast system, probably jumping through 3 or 4 different ISPs that have peering arrangements with Comcast, getting to that server, and then maybe taking a different route back to my computer. So when we have a player like Google who can come in and say, no, we own everything, and the only thing we have to worry about is getting it out to the customer, I think that changes the game. What do you think would happen if Netflix took the same approach? Or what would happen if, say, Netflix partnered up with Google and said, hey, we're going to provide our content on your network, and now if someone wants Netflix, this super premium version of Netflix, they have to get Google Fiber?
That would be terrible, actually, because that limits the consumer's options, right? I mean, and not that, who knows if Google will become evil Google or eviler in the future or whatever, but yeah, I mean, that limits options, and that's just bad. I mean, it's great that Google has the ability to do that, but we don't want them to be the only ones who can, supply, Netflix.
Good point. This is something that we haven't heard the end of. If this shakes out the way that it's looking to shake out, and if Comcast is actually able to purchase Time Warner Cable, which I honestly hope that doesn't go through. I hope that hits those legal hurdles and dies before it actually makes it that far. But if it does, or even if it doesn't, we're going to see more and more of these test cases where the ISPs are going to try to milk more and more money. And in fact, we're going to get to the point, and I think it's going to involve Comcast, where you've got a company, Comcast, that owns both the pipes and the content being delivered. Because remember, they own NBC. And I could see them getting to the point where they say, you know what, we don't really want people to watch Netflix. We want them to watch NBC. We want them to watch our content. So here's the thing. We can't stop you from being on our network, but we're going to charge you a crazy exorbitant amount of money to make sure that your content is delivered in the same way that our content is delivered. And that just strikes me as bad for business, period. Yeah.
Totally.
How about this? Let's go on to something a bit more cheery. How about we talk about, I don't know, Microsoft getting caught leaking their Hotmail. Okay, all right. Now, again, you know me. I like to be fair. Let's be fair. If you've not heard about this story, this is about Microsoft trying to catch the person who leaked out details about Windows 8, and actually code and executables to a blogger who was able to have inside information about Windows strategies, about the release dates, etc. In doing this investigation, they started focusing on a blogger who they believed was in contact with the leaker inside Microsoft. Specifically, they were looking for someone who had contact with a former Microsoft staffer by the name of Alex Kibkalo. I'm not even going to try to say that properly. Now, they believed that he had sent Windows 8 instructions, release dates, and code to the blogger, so they went through the blogger's Hotmail account. But there's some irony here that a Microsoft leak was leaked on a Microsoft product.
Yeah.
Let's get past that. There's a lot of people who are really pissed off. They're pissed off because Microsoft went into this blogger's Hotmail account. They found the incriminating emails, and then they used it to arrest this former Microsoft staffer. Now, before we get into any of the legal stuff, first of all, Chase, how do you feel about Microsoft being able to do that?
Well, I'm not familiar with their terms of service for using their email, but yeah, that's not cool to just kind of peek in there. I mean, unless there's some sort of subpoena, involved. It's really, it really shouldn't be done.
Yeah, no, and I think most people would agree with you. I think most people say, wait a minute, unless there was some sort of course of law here, unless there was some sort of due process, Microsoft shouldn't just be able to trip willy-nilly through everyone's Hotmail account.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. According to their terms of service, they can. When you agreed to use Hotmail, you actually agreed to let them go through your mail, to let them go through anything that you send to a Microsoft server. Now, again, I'm sure there's a lot of outrage about this, but in reality, this is not all that uncommon. If you work in IT, this is pretty much how it works. Everything is just bits running through your network. Everything gets monitored. Everything gets copied. Now, what Microsoft did was not illegal, but I think a lot of us are saying it is immoral, which is why Microsoft has now changed their terms of service. Now, you're going to love this, Dale. They've now said that they're altering their terms of service so that Microsoft will no longer look into an inbox unless a legal team separate from the investigating team believes that there's evidence of a crime that would be sufficient to justify a court order if one were applicable.
Wait, so that really doesn't change anything.
Exactly. That's the funny thing. Yeah, Microsoft, what they were essentially saying is, okay, look, we're not going to turn this over to a court. We're not going to have due process, but we promise you, we're going to ask this guy over here, who's not actually part of our investigation, if we should look into your inbox. Now, are you filled with confidence?
Yeah, and if he says, yeah, you guys should do it, then yeah, we're clear.
The interesting thing here is Microsoft, even though they're taking heat for this, I mean, there's a lot, especially since we are so privacy sensitive right now with all the NSA/Snowden revelations. Microsoft is not saying we're going to relinquish that power. They want to keep that power. They're not saying, okay, we're now going to turn it over to the Department of Justice. They're just saying, we'll try to be a bit more judicious in how we apply this power. I don't like this, but here's the thing, and I would love to get your view on this, Dale. We're going to see this more and more from companies who we're not the customers for. We're not the customer of Microsoft, at least for their services side. We're not the customer for Facebook. We're not the customer from Twitter.
Right.
We are the product, right? I mean, we're what they're selling. We're what they have to offer to their advertisers. And so as such, they're not going to give up the thing that they're actually selling. And we can talk about data privacy all we want, but as long as we live in a social age that's set up the way it is right now, no company is ever going to say, yeah, we're going to take your privacy as the last word. That's absolutely, we're not going to share your information with anybody. And do you see a way out of that?
Aside from starting to pay for these services that we're using for free, yeah, we're sort of at their mercy.
Yeah, I guess the ennui that people are feeling is they're like, wait a minute, how much of our personal freedoms are going to be taken away? But then on the other side, and remember, we like being balanced here. Do you do this? Do you put your pictures on Facebook?
Yeah, I used to. I don't use Facebook as much anymore, but yeah, I still have plenty of pictures up there. Yeah.
Do you tweet out?
I do. Yeah.
Do you use cloud services?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So as I'm going to say this, as a person who is absolutely versed in social media and cloud services, do you think it's your responsibility to guard your own data, or do you think the keepers of your data should be guarding it for you?
Yeah, my data is my responsibility, and I'm trusting these services, with my data. I don't share anything that I don't, want, that I would care terribly if it was shared publicly, So it's a matter of if you really want to keep that private, then, it's you don't put it in the cloud, and even better, keep it on a thumb drive, or
Yeah. Well, I think this is one of those things on one of my other shows, This Week in Enterprise Tech, I'm always trying to tell people, which is, look, if it's your data, it's your responsibility. And we would love to think that people are acting in our best interest at all times, but the truth is they're not, and they're not designed to. These companies are not designed to guard our privacy. They're designed to get our information so they can sell it. In the same way, Microsoft, in having its Hotmail service, of course it was trying to get something out of it. Of course it could look through your email. And of course you probably should have looked through the terms of service to realize that there was a section in there saying, anything you put in our service, we can look through. Again, kind of disappointing, but not surprising, really.
No. I mean, the moral here is don't leak Microsoft secrets on a Microsoft service.
You heard it here, folks. If you are going to leak some Microsoft secrets, go over to Yahoo Mail or jump in the Gmail. Don't be putting on a Hotmail server. There is another angle to this, which is in the story, the developer, the former Microsoft staffer, actually used Microsoft services at the company to send out these emails. So what they could have done is they could have actually stepped back through their campus systems, through their campus servers, through their own email servers to find these connections and catch them that way. I guess they didn't choose to do that because it was probably easier just to search through a ready interface like Hotmail.
Well, because I think since the blogger was the known entity,
right?
They went, and they probably,
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people who are saying, well, if this does break the law, then we've got the poison tree. But Microsoft could successfully argue, well, no, because there was another way to get the access. It just would have taken a lot longer. If we had gone through our own logs, we eventually would have caught him. It would have taken us a lot longer. We would have to have gone through a lot more information. Yeah, let's get away from that. You know what? Microsoft isn't so bad. You know what is bad? Turkey. So in Turkey right now, they've got a big throwdown. The Turkish Prime Minister, who I am going to butcher his name right now, Tayyip Erdogan. My boy Tayyip has ordered that Twitter be blocked because it was being used to tweet about government corruption just ahead of their elections. He ordered that the local telecom regulator, TIB, block Twitter. However, what we've seen is that the block is completely ineffective. In fact, the president of Turkey has been tweeting. He's been tweeting through SMS. They've been tweeting by using third-party services. They've been tweeting by using proxies to get around the block. And in essence, it's a nice microcosm. I'd like to talk to you about this because we've seen this before in several countries where they think that blocking a service is somehow going to quell unrest. It's going to make people forget that there are issues that people were talking about. And time again, we've seen that doesn't work, right?
No, yeah. Did they do something similar in Tripoli or?
Yeah, they tried to.
Yeah.
It's weird because we've seen this since the Arab Springs. It seems the very first thing that you try to do is you block Twitter. If you block Twitter, it makes everything better. But as we've seen, it's almost impossible to block Twitter if you've got a device that can text. And it's almost impossible to block Twitter as long as people are willing to give you another way to get on to the internet other than the state-run, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another point I want to bring up here is that there has long been a proposal in the United States Congress to create what they call the internet kill switch. Now, it doesn't get much press because it's stupid, because there is no such thing as an internet kill switch. But they wanted to give lawmakers the ability to turn off the internet if there was ever a national emergency and they were afraid that it was being used by terrorists to communicate with one another. It sounds silly, but then you see examples of countries actually trying to do it. Dale, what's the future of this? I mean, can you is social media able to be turned off?
No, not completely. I mean, you've got so many avenues, and so many folks who are ready to distribute information on how to circumvent, these issues with governments trying to shut things down. And as services, we get more and more of these services, and hopefully we can get these services where they kind of speak to one another more. You can kind of hop between them very easily. Hopefully this will be and as more and more countries realize, that this is a freedom of speech thing, and they'll sort of create legislations that will, prevent governments from doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, all right. I want to go to the last story of the night, and this is something I saved specifically for you because I think your background is great for it. We started the first story with music. This time, we're talking about programming. Specifically, we're talking about the rise of the programmer. Now, you may have heard about this story. It involves GitHub, which is sort of a darling startup here in the Silicon Valley. Last week, Julie Ann Horvath, who was a former developer for GitHub, actually one of the most strong proponents of GitHub, especially in a time in which a lot of Silicon Valley programming startups have been accused of sexist bias. She quit. And the reason why she quit is that she claimed that she was being harassed by one of the co-founders and by the wife of one of the company's co-founders. She claimed that she turned down the advances of this engineer, who then turned down her code in retaliation. Now, since this story has broken, the co-founder has been suspended. His wife has been barred access from the building, but she is still on the outs. She's not coming back. I want to ask you about this because this is the world that you live in. This is the world that you are part of.
Yeah. Do
you see a lot of the sexism? I mean, do you see a lot of the programmer mentality?
Not really. I mean, not in my department. I mean, we have a a department of, well, in our office, it's like 3 developers, and we have, you know, more in another office, but, you know, it's 4 actually, 3 and a woman who we work with, and I actually sit right next to her, so if anyone's harassing her, it's me. But yeah, I mean, our relationship is such that, you know, I'm asking her for advice on CSS, or I'm asking her for advice with other women, you know. But I mean, as far as there being a bro kind of mentality, I could see how when we have a lot of guys together, and you know, they want to release some stress or whatever, you know, with us, between our department and the IT department, you know, we've got Nerf gun wars breaking out, which she doesn't really take part in, but it's not a thing where I don't think that it's not something that really bothers her. It's just that, you know, she just, you know, doesn't take part in it. You know, if she's stressed at all, it's just because she doesn't want to get beamed in the head with a Nerf dart. But you know, I think she's fine with it, and, you know, cool with it otherwise. So yeah, I mean, maybe you know, maybe I'll ask her, like, hey, you know, how do you feel about this? Is this completely cool with you? Because I mean, I try to be mindful about that, especially after, you know, the whole Donklegate thing. You know, I'm sorry for even bringing it up. But yeah, it's terrible that this woman, being like, you know, such a one of the founding members of this company, and having to go through that, that's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I'm reminded of they do these sort of hackathon build-off type things, and we've had a couple of them in San Francisco. I attended one, and there were no fewer than 5 different apps that had been developed, and this was like a 4-hour contest that compared boobs. I mean, literally, that's what they did. It was like the boob comparison tools, and I'm thinking, why would you think that would be okay? It just looks really, really stupid. It looks childish. But B, you've got female developers here. I mean, what would it be like if they created the dong comparison, that you hold it up to someone and it guesses the size of their genitalia? We would think that would be inappropriate. So why is it not inappropriate the other way?
Oh, it absolutely is inappropriate. In the workplace, absolutely, that's inappropriate. I mean, unless, you know, I mean, at the same time, I know some female developers who would totally, you know, jump on that and write that dong app, you know, and totally, you know, be a part of that bro culture, you know. So it really depends on, you know, the individuals involved and their sensitivities, I think.
Yeah. I think, you know, this is more than just a programmer. This is part of the programming culture that can develop in a startup. That's, you know, one of these informal, there is no boss, we're all the boss type cultures, where it can hide, or it can even foster that sort of immaturity. I think maybe that's what we need to fight out against. Because it sounds to me like your workplace is actually a pretty decent place to work.
Yeah. I mean, we have fun, we get the job done.
Yeah, have fun, get job done. I like that. Well, how about this? I'm thinking maybe it might be time for us to discuss our obsessions. I understand that you don't have an obsession right now, except for Veronica Mars. Is this true?
Which I'm going to catch tomorrow, but yeah, I am a marshmallow. This is true.
I did not even know that was a term for it. It's kind of scary that there's actually a term.
Can you get this, my Kickstarter sticker there?
Oh, that's what you got for supporting the new season?
Yeah. the new film.
Wait, who came up with marshmallow? Is that really what you call yourselves?
I don't know, but that's what Veronica says, so that's what it is.
All right. I'll take that. I have been into something a bit more eclectic. Maybe I can call it. I have been into something a bit stranger. Now, there is this animated series called Attack on Titan. It was recommended to me by some of the guys over at Pixel Core. They said this is the best animation ever. I have to agree. I like the animation style. The backstory is that it's this world in which these huge colossal beings, these things called titans, which look like naked, huge humans without genitalia, go around destroying things. So not super huge plot, advanced plot. And then you've got these warriors who glide around on these machines that let them shoot wires and fly across the city and swing swords that vibrate and kill these giants. It's not the most original story, but the animation and the drama is actually pretty cool. You're seeing some of it here. I promised to give 4 episodes. I said, okay, I'll watch it for 4 episodes. I watched it, and I'm giving it another 4 episodes, but rapidly I'm wondering, what the heck am I watching? Have you ever had that moment where you're like, should I be interested in this? What am I watching?
I'm having it right now watching this clip. I actually had heard about this too. I'm not sure. Maybe might have even been Shannon who told me about this, I think. But yeah, I'm actually dying to watch this myself.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I'd say, you know what, give it 4 episodes.
Okay.
And actually, don't start with episode 1. Watch the first 2 episodes for the backstory, then watch to episode 6.
Okay.
And see if it grabs you. Because if it doesn't grab you by episode 6, honestly, it ain't gonna grab you at all, ever, at all, because it's weird.
It seems like it's up my alley.
I don't know if I needed to know that about you. All right, so that's my obsession. How about this? Let's get back to the tech. All right, I wanted to bring up a little something that I had from my BYB days. You may have noticed that I've gotten really big into Titanfall. It's kind of my drug of choice right now. You've seen us play it here on the TV network. Essentially, you're walking around in a huge robot, or as a soldier trying to get into one of these huge robots. It's a mecha game. You're trying to blow things up. I've been entranced. I've been addicted, and we've been playing it pretty much nonstop since it came out last week. But I had to take a trip, and I went into withdrawals because I wasn't going to play it on my Acer S7. I love my S7, but that thing just doesn't have the horsepower to play something like Titanfall. So I thought maybe, just maybe, you should take a look at a gaming notebook.
Stealth fighter inspired composite fiber panels, Gucci designed palm rest, 30 megapixel web camera, ultra thin Blu-ray optical drive, Porsche branded display, smart material coated keyboard keys, liquid metal casing, titanium hinges, gold coated USB multifunction ports. All part of this futuristic laptop from Razer. Wait, what is this, a designer espresso maker? Heck no. This is the 2013 Razer Blade 14-inch gaming laptop, and it doesn't have any of that junk. What it does have is a crazy amount of horsepower packed into an ultra-portable laptop designed for one thing and one thing alone: gaming. The Blade is currently the world's thinnest and lightest gaming ultrabook, at 13.6 inches long, 9.3 inches deep, and 0.66 inches high, with 4.1 pounds of heft, all wrapped in a jet black industrial design-inspired aluminum shell. Right above a large responsive multi-touch trackpad is a recessed keyboard that has plenty of travel and a pleasingly firm feedback, accented by Razer's ghoulish green backlight. Straddling the keyboard are stereo speakers that provide plenty of power, even if they are a bit anemic on the low end. The display is a 14-inch HD Plus 1600 by 900 16 by 9 matte finish panel with an LED backlight. It's topped by a 1.3 megapixel web camera and an array microphone. Razer omitted a touchscreen, which is disappointing since the Blade ships with Windows 8.1, but not unexpected since touch isn't a feature required by the type of games the Blade was made for. Ports are sparse. The left side houses the power port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a combo headphone microphone jack. The right side adds a Kensington lock port, an HDMI output, and a third USB 3.0 port. Noticeably absent is the Ethernet port, which is more than a little annoying considering that this is designed to be a gaming notebook. Instead, onboard networking is provided by a killer wireless N 1202 chipset providing dual-band 2.4 and 5 GHz 802.11 ABGN, along with Bluetooth 4.01. Our review unit came equipped with a 256GB SSD, but the Blade can also come equipped with 128 or 512 GB of ultra-fast storage. Of course, being a gaming notebook, the real specs are all about the power. And the processing punch comes from a quad-core Intel Haswell i7-4702HQ CPU, operating at 2.2 GHz with a 3.2 GHz turbo mode. The CPU is supported by 8 GB of 1600 MHz DDR3L memory. The Blade uses NVIDIA's Optimus Tech. That means that the laptop will use power-sipping integrated class graphics processing when browsing or media watching, but then switch to a pixel-crunching NVIDIA GeForce GTX 765M with 2 GB of dedicated GDDR5 memory when gaming. When paired with the quad-core Haswell CPU, this means that the blade's integrated 70 watt-hour lithium-ion polymer battery was able to survive our rundown test for 7 hours 2 minutes. Now that number will go down if the GPU and CPU are taxed, but that's still a phenomenal runtime on a quad-core gaming laptop that simultaneously gives you a fantastic boost in horsepower. And believe me, that power boost shows. In 3D Mark Vantage, the Razer Blade topped out at 16,955. That places it in the upper echelon of gaming notebooks, and it dominates gaming ultrabooks from Alienware, Main Gear, and even Razer's last generation of gaming notebooks, besting some of them by more than double. Test after test showed high frame rate gaming, even with the eye candy turned to 11. Battlefield, Call of Duty, Crysis, BioShock, all smooth and crystal clear. The one downside to all this processing power in a redonkulously small package is that the Blade tends to get hot. Uncomfortably hot when pushed to the limit. But then again, after so much mind-boggling awesomeness, I probably couldn't feel my fingers anyways. While the lack of non-gaming accoutrements may sour the Blade for some, it is undeniably the gaming ultrabook to have for the gamer on the go. The Razer Blade 14-inch gaming laptop is available now. You can find it online for under $2,000.
I actually contacted our friends over at Razer and asked them if I could borrow one of those for the next time I'm on a trip, because yeah, I need my Titanfall. Dale, I want to thank you so very much for coming on the show. You came all the way over here to the studio. I've been such a fan of your work, such a fan of your music. Can you tell the folks where they can find you if they want to find out more about what you do, about where you are, and about the stuff that you create?
I will, but first I just want to say thank you for having me out here. It's great to finally get to hang out with you for a little while, and I love Coding 101, by the way, and I'm a fan. I watch that live, while I'm doing my thing.
How about this? Let me publicly say right now, if I invite you to be the code warrior, the coding expert for one of our modules, maybe about Python, would you do it?
Absolutely.
All right, there you have it, folks. I think we have a brand new guest for Coding 101.
But yeah, folks can find me at Dale O. Chase on Twitter. dchase.com or dchase.bandcamp.com is where you can find all my music very easily. Right now, everything is pay what you want. Pay nothing, or support. And right now my latest is Love Plus Plus, which I released for Valentine's Day, which is sort of a companion to my latest full-length Type Def. So check both of those out for the latest.
What I would say for everyone listening right now is try it. Seriously, just try it. Some of his tracks are just hypnotic. I've been listening to the same music over and over and over for about 6 months just because it is so entrancing. Type Def really changed what I expected out of hip hop nerdcore.
Wow, thanks, man. Yeah. Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you so very much. So check him out at Dale O. Chase on Twitter, or at dalechase.com, or at dchase.bandcamp.com. Download it. If you like it, go ahead and donate it. Help him to make the music so he doesn't have to game Spotify. Again, Dale, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Now, I also want to say thanks to you, because you helped me make this show possible. If you guys didn't come to watch every week, if you didn't subscribe to YouTube, if you didn't follow me on Twitter, there'd be no reason for me to do this show. And every time you watch and every time we have a successful show, it lets me show the powers that be that there is room for some, we'll just call it geek culture shows on twit.tv. Also, I want to remind you that you can find me on the Twit TV network all week. I'm spread out everywhere, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. On Mondays, you're going to find me 2:30 p.m. Pacific time for This Week in Enterprise Tech. We're going to talk about network technology. We're going to talk about how the world is connected. We're going to talk about the things that you should know about your data flowing across the internet. On Thursdays, I've got 2 shows, actually. I've got Coding 101, which goes off at 1:30. Dale just talked about it. And I've also got Know-How at 12:30. Come join us, geek out, enjoy building things, because that's what those days are all about. And finally, on Friday, you're going to find me here, Padre's Corner, every day at 7 o'clock or 7:30 or 7:45. One of those, we're kind of loose and fun with it. Also, as long as you're at it, why not drop by my Twitter page? You're going to find me at padre@twitter.com. That's at Padre SJ. There you'll be able to see what I do each week. You're going to be able to see where I've been. I do travel quite a bit. And you're going to be able to suggest topics for future episodes of all my shows, as well as tell me who you want to see on future episodes of Padre's Corner. We've been booked out. We've actually got some really, really cool guests coming up in the next 2 months, so you're definitely going to want to stay tuned in. I don't want to have any spoilers. I will say that there's a couple of actors, and there's a beloved sci-fi celebrity. So, yeah, stay tuned. I also want to thank everyone here at the Brick House who makes this possible. For Lisa and Leo for turning a blind eye while I take over the stream. For all the people who let me put on the show in the middle of all the funkiness that is the Brick House. And finally, to you again, because you know that I love you. I'm Father Robert Balacer, and you know what? I believe that this has been Padre's Corner.